Hey guys, we are Sean and Christy. This is Long Long Honeymoon. Today we have a fantastic topic for you, a great RV travel destination, Guadalupe Mountains National Park and Carlsbad Caverns National Park. So we're actually grouping these two national parks together because due to their close proximity, if you go to one, you're probably going to go to the other.
Guadalupe Mountains National Park is in Texas. Carlsbad Caverns National Park is in New Mexico. They're in two different states, but they're literally 25 miles apart, maybe, from entrance to entrance.
And which park you visit first will probably depend on the direction you're coming to this area from.
If you're coming from the east to these parks, services are nearby in Carlsbad, New Mexico.
We are in lovely El Paso, Texas. We've stopped at Paco Taco.
We came into Guadalupe Mountains National Park traveling from the west.
And be prepared, there is nothing on that drive. So make sure when you're in El Paso, if you're coming from the west, you stop, you fill up your gas tank, you fill up your freshwater tank, you empty your gray and black water tanks.
And you're going through something called the Chihuahuan Desert. Speaking of Chihuahuas, we're joined today by a special guest, baby girl, the Chihuahua. So the drive, at least coming from the El Paso side into Guadalupe Mountains National Park, is scenic in a desert sort of way.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of just wide open vistas, and there's some really interesting cacti. What's plural of cactus? I think cacti.
Yeah.
Sounds right to me. And so you're traveling through this desert terrain for miles and miles, as the Who might say. Does anybody remember the Who? And suddenly you come across these mountains in the desert. First of all, there is an RV campground. It is a parking lot.
It's literally a parking lot with painted stripes, pull-through sites. If you are longer than 55 feet, you probably won't fit.
And if your RV rig is that long, you're going to have big trouble.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So we were sort of on the max end of the site that we were in, staying hitched. There's not a lot of parking there. It's a pretty small parking lot. Two things to know. There's no dump station there. If you show up expecting to be able to empty your tanks, you're going to be out of luck.
There is a water supply. Unfortunately, it is the slowest water supply we've ever encountered in all of North America.
Yeah.
I would say all the 49 states we've taken our RV to, all of Canada, this is the slowest water spigot ever.
Correct. And we didn't know it at the time, but you're not supposed to connect it to your RV. But once you see how poor the water pressure is, you'll understand that it's really just meant to fill some gallon jugs here and there for drinking water.
Don't count on that fresh water supply because we were only able to get a few gallons out of it after waiting 15 or 20 minutes. You really ideally should have your freshwater tank full of fresh water before you arrive in that park. Now, this parking lot campground is literally a parking lot, but it has some great amenities, including hiking trails.
There's a trailhead adjacent to the parking lot campground here in Guadalupe Mountains National Park, and it leads up to some really nice trails back into the mountains. I'm sure in the middle of summer, it's really hot here. They recommend that everyone bring plenty of water when going out on these trails. And you gotta watch out for mountain lions, because apparently there are a lot of mountain lions in this park.
So you'll never find really more convenient hiking connected to a campground. And they also had a basic bathhouse with no showers, I believe, but with bathrooms at least.
Yeah, so toilets and sinks, that sort of thing.
So it's really a beautiful national park, and it's a good example of a national park that might be off your radar a little bit. In fact, one of the park employees told me Everybody in Texas goes down to Big Bend National Park, and they tend to overlook Guadalupe Mountains National Park. And they said that's just fine with them. They like being kind of a hidden gem of Texas. To really see the park properly, you need to be prepared to do some hiking because there are no roads to a lot of the backcountry in the park. Not only your hiking gear, but you have to bring all your water with you because there's no freshwater supply when you get deeper into the park.
This area used to actually be home to a shallow ocean. And so they've actually recovered sea fossils, like prehistoric shark bones in this area. But sadly, the dinosaurs fell victim to climate change. Raises the question, did fossils burn fossil fuels?
There's also just really interesting terrain. I mean, there are canyons, there are obviously the mountains, and there are meadows in the higher elevations that are really unique and are quite a different type of terrain from what you've been seeing in the Chihuahuan Desert, which kind of surrounds that area.
One other thing about the campground, there are some tent sites on the other side of the park as well, but there's only about 20 RV sites and they are first come, first serve. So you can't make a reservation for them, it's just show up and you have to pay in cash. They don't take checks or credit cards or any of that kind of stuff. As of right now, the nightly rate is $15. So you better have yourself some 5s and 10s on hand because there's nobody to make change for you.
So it's kind of a bare bones experience going there from a camping standpoint, but it's a really fantastic destination, certainly if you're anywhere in that area. We're talking about what I call the left elbow of Texas right now. You know, it's really far, far to the western border. And the key reason that Guadalupe Mountains National Park should be on your list is because of its neighbor in New Mexico, Carlsbad Caverns National Park. Carlsbad Caverns is a holy moly type of experience.
Yeah. It's the type of park that you drive out of your way for because it is worth the effort to get there. I think this cave kind of has a wow factor with the formations that are inside and the hikes that you can do.
Carlsbad Caverns is absolutely the most spectacular cave or cavern type of system I've ever seen. Certainly the most beautiful. I would say the most unique in terms of the different formations.
They actually call a lot of the formations, they refer to them as decorations, and it's apparently one of the most decorated caverns in the country, maybe the world. That is what really makes it unique, are all the different types of formations that are in the cave. And it makes it look like sculpture or like art. It really does. Like someone made it on purpose, that it didn't just happen by chance. You know?
Yeah, it just, in places, it really doesn't seem random.
This cave just keeps going and going. Just amazing rock formations. It's kind of like being in a cathedral underground.
It's incredibly vast. It's hard to show you this properly in still photos and even in video. I mean, for one thing, it's pretty dark down there, but you do have the benefit these days of a brand new LED lighting system that's been installed throughout the caverns. It's sort of state-of-the-art lighting that burns cooler, and it's also just brighter and more effective at really showcasing the most beautiful decorations in these caverns.
I'm kind of a tall guy. I'm accustomed to ducking. I've been ducking for most of my adult life.
But it is such a vast network of caverns that I never really even felt that claustrophobic being underground. And you're going, how far underground do we go? Probably
it's about 750 feet below ground. So the equivalent of a 75-story building.
Exactly. Think about a 75-story tall building. Now think about that underground, and you're going that far down into these caverns. But the caverns are so vast. Someone described them as it's almost like being in the Grand Canyon, except you're underground.
I think John Wayne.
John Wayne
who
or
said it
Roy
was
Rogers
the
or
underground
Willie Nelson or
Grand Canyon. They've actually filmed a lot of movies in the park, so you might recognize it if you're like a Western or sci-fi fan. They list all the movies that have filmed there and some TV shows and that sort of thing.
So we would absolutely recommend Carlsbad Caverns as kind of a must-see. I think if you're anywhere around that area, definitely put that on your list of places to go. But something you should know, unfortunately, there's no RV camping in the park area. So like there's no RV campground literally at Carlsbad Caverns. For camping, you're going to have to, at the very least, go to nearby White City and you'll find some basic supplies there. Or you could travel on to Carlsbad, New Mexico, which is not far away, and you'll find a lot of resources there.
Yeah, it's a good-sized town. Walmart, all those sort of supplies, and several RV parks. So if you need amenities, you need full hookup, you'll find it in Carlsbad.
There's even a little brew pub with pizza.
And beer.
Yep.
So Sean was very happy.
I was.
Something to know about Carlsbad Caverns. There are 2 hikes that you can do on your own through the caverns, and then the remainder of the hikes are hikes that require a guide, so a tour guide from the park. And those are an extra fee.
A long time ago, they used to take tours down here, and they would turn out all the lights here at the Rock of Ages and sing the old Def Leppard song from 1983, Rock of Ages. One of my favorites.
If you have a National Parks Pass, you'll get into the self-guided tours with that. Otherwise, you have to buy a ticket to do those tours on your own. There are 2 options for seeing the caves. One is to enter through the natural entrance, which is what we did. It's 1.25 miles long, and you enter through the natural entrance that like the bats fly in and out of and that sort of thing. There's a paved trail. It is very, very steep. So if you are somebody that has trouble with your knees or, downgrades in general, I would not recommend doing this hike because it's basically 1.25 miles of you going at a pretty steep decline the whole way down. It takes a little over an hour to do it. It's really dark.
So we just entered the part of Carlsbad Caverns they call the Twilight Zone. Basically, without any artificial light, everything would be pitch black from this point forward. Now I have a really good sort of low light camera set up here, so it looks a lot brighter in this video than it actually is. It's actually very dark.
You have to pay attention to where you're walking. You can't always be looking around. You have to watch your feet because it is really easy to sort of get disoriented in the darkness and lose your way.
Even after you've gone through area after area of spectacular decorations, you get to a place called the Big Room, and it's, I believe, more than 8 acres of cavern.
It's really hard to capture what you see down here in imagery, and that's because I think of the sense of scale, the sense of space. Like a lot of times when I've been in caves, I've felt claustrophobic, but these ceilings are so high that I haven't really felt claustrophobic very much.
It really feels like you're in Middle Earth, and you expect to see cave trolls and dwarves go marching by at any moment.
So the tour of the Big Room is considered a separate hike from the natural entrance hike that we took to get down to the Big Room. Once you get to the Big Room, it's another 1.25 miles to walk that entire loop underground. Now, if you don't want to take the natural entrance that we took, which is the steep entrance to get down there, you can take an elevator. Buy your pass, there's an elevator that goes straight down to the entrance of the Big Room, and that loop is 1.25 miles. It's relatively flat. And they also have a cut through about halfway. So if you don't want to do the full 1.25 miles, you can do half of it.
By the time you get through with this hike, you're going to feel like you've seen your fair share of caverns and stalactites and stalagmites and all those decorations, all those formations, because you're going to see probably more in this cave than you've seen in your life in any other cave.
There are several other tours that you can do that are ranger led, that you have to make reservations for, that you have to pay extra for. Those reservations have to be made at least 48 hours in advance. They do sometimes have walk-up availability the day of, but really the groups are not that big on these tours, so you really should make your reservation in advance. And on most of these tours, you're required to wear sturdy shoes. So like if you have on flip-flops or just tennis shoes or whatever, they won't let you on the tour. Like it has to be like a hiking boot type of sole, because some of those caves that you go in with those types of tours are more rugged and you need a stronger sole. They also require that you wear like a headlamp, and some of them you even, I think, get down and like crawl on your hands and knees because you're in like really tight spaces. So make sure you read about the tour before you book it, because if you're claustrophobic or something, you don't want to get stuck on one of those tours where you're crawling through a hole, you know, the size of a manhole or something.
You're going to love the infrastructure there, because even though we were hiking 750 feet or so underground, I felt the trail was always well marked, reasonably well lit considering the circumstances, and is pretty flat and paved in most areas. So they know that a lot of people are coming into this cave without a lot of spelunking experience, and so they put up a lot of great infrastructure there that really helps guide you through the experience. And when you get to the bottom and it's time to turn around and come back out, you do not have to hike all the way back up. We've decided, instead of attempting to hike back up, which would take approximately 10 hours, we're going to take the elevator instead.
When we were there, closing time was, I believe, 5:30 or 6 p.m. And so the last person they would let enter the natural entrance was at 4 o'clock. So we had to step into the natural entrance and start our descent by 4 p.m. so that we would have time to make it to the bottom, loop through the big room, and get back out. At a certain point, they cut off the entrance and they have a ranger go through and kind of push everybody along to make sure that nobody's staying in the cave overnight when they're not supposed to.
Around twilight, bats fly out by the thousands and go out on their nightly hunting excursions. And then I'm told around 4 to 6 a.m. they eventually circle back and come back in the entrance of the caverns. But it is an awesome sight to witness all of these bats rushing out of these caverns. And it goes on for a long time. This is not something that's, it's not over in like 5 minutes or 10 minutes or half an hour even. They're still flowing out of these caverns. And they've actually constructed a little amphitheater there so you can watch the bats as they exit.
And something else to note is the bats are not there year round. So if you are there, I believe they say like mid to late April till usually around the end of October, you'll see the bats. We were actually there in November and there were still some bats there, so we sort of lucked up and were able to see some. In the winter months and early spring, the bats aren't there, so you won't see them those times of year.
All right, guys, that was a quick look at Guadalupe Mountains National Park in Texas and Carlsbad Caverns National Park in New Mexico. If you have been to these areas and have any kind of tips or suggestions for our audience, post a comment. We'd like to hear from you guys who maybe have more experience exploring both of these parks. We have been a lot of places with our RV, but we haven't been to as many national parks as we would like. And so every year we're making an effort to check more national parks off the list and explore some of these most beautiful areas of our country. Until next time, thank you all for tuning in to this episode of Long Long Honeymoon.
If you haven't yet, please click the subscribe button down below. That means a lot to us to have you join Loloho Nation. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down. I mean, you know, be honest. And until next time, what do we say?
We say
Loloho.
Dander boots, mountain light hiking boot, against the traditional Dutch wooden clog. The Danner boot is constructed of an all-leather upper that's made by hand of one piece of leather. The wooden clog is made by hand also one piece of wood. So we're gonna call this one a tie. Danner boots get the job done and they will last for years. Wooden clogs also get the job done, and if kept termite free, they also will last for years. Plus, wooden clogs are buoyant. They will float in water, and in a pinch, you can use them as firewood. Advantage, wooden clogs. Danner boots are a little bit heavy and bulky, but once you break them in, they are very supportive and comfortable over the long term. Wooden clogs, not so much. They feel kind of like wearing a large log on your foot. Plus, you run the risk of splinters. Danner style is truly classic. You can wear these boots just about anywhere. Wooden clog, also truly classic, but you look kind of like a large elf whenever you wear these things. I'm not sure really what these are good for.